Hey everyone, Adam here. So this is part 4 in my 4-part series GYLT, also known as Get Your Life Together. Now obviously if you haven't seen part 1, 2, or 3, you may want to check that out first before watching this video. However, if you're short on time and you just want to continue watching this, hopefully I will be able to tie everything nice and neatly together. That's kind of the purpose of this video, so that way we can kind of see how everything is supposed to work together to get you the results that hopefully that you are looking for. Now, if you saw the other videos, you can probably already guess how important it is to kind of use all of these techniques to get the things done that you are looking to achieve. And I still stand that all 3 videos probably stand as decent advice on their own, but as I've said throughout this series, the real magic happens when you're able to combine all 3. So let's tie this all together. Now, a lot of times there's a huge disconnect of what people say that they're going to do versus the reality of them achieving what they end up thinking that they are going to achieve, right? I hear this from family members, from friends, and people I don't know. And again, it's everyone does it, including myself. So this isn't me trying to disparage anyone or make anyone feel bad, because a lot of these things that these goals and aspirations that we have is very, very difficult. And as I tie this together, we're going to see a lot of the hurdles that we have to cross in order to make things somewhat successful. So let's start with phase 1 or part 1, and that is realistic goal setting, or a lot of times it ends up people almost kind of like when you hear a person say like these are the things that they are looking to do or achieve, a lot of times I think that it may just be that individual just thinking out loud. You know, if a person says like, oh, after the holidays, I really want to start eating healthy again, right? But I'm going to wait till after the holidays. Or, oh man, like I'm really looking for a new job. I can't stand my current job. A lot of times this ends up being like, you as the individual listening to this interpret this as, oh, this is someone's goal. This is what they want to do. When in actuality, I think most of the time it may be that individual either just venting or maybe kind of like working through it in that first phase of, I wonder if this is a goal I want to do. And so a lot of times it's just maybe a person just thinking of things that they may want to do. And so, you know, later on, a few days later or a week later, you know, they're able to think about it even more. You heard them say all of these things that they want to achieve, but in the end, they just decide that like, oh man, like never mind, like I've decided against that. And so oftentimes I think there's sometimes a disconnect of what people say that they either want to do or things that they're thinking about just because they're really in that early stage of just thinking. And because in this stage you can kind of dream big, I think this is one of the easiest phases to do and to also get carried away with, right? Because it's real easy to have all these grand plans. And again, I definitely do this myself, of things that you may want to achieve, and then you know you talk about it with people that you're close, and then you realize like, oh, never mind, that's maybe not the best idea. So this initial phase, I think, is where a lot of goals or ideas or whatever end up just dying out because after you have time to think about it, as I said, you may realize that that's something that is not necessarily for you. Now, if you are thinking that, yes, this is definitely something I want to do, and this is definitely something that you've decided that you want to pursue, then congratulations. You have, you know, survived part 1, and you have started hopefully thinking about realistic goals that you would like to achieve. So the next step then is where some of the harder work is actually going to start. Not the hardest work, but a little bit more forethought and hard work has to be put in. And because there's a little bit more harder work, this is another area where goals and things that you want to accomplish can easily die out as well. So what is the second phase? This is the planning phase, where you're trying to come up with an action plan. And basically in part 2 of the series, I talked about how we want to maybe think about that in terms of boundaries. I think that's a great place to start. But in reality, yeah, you're coming up with an action plan. And so if you recall, with our boundaries, we're going to set an upper boundary and a lower boundary, right? We're going to say things that we want to do and things that we don't want to do as part of our boundary matrix. Now, you can also think of this maybe as like the research phase, right? You're trying to, as you're coming up with the action plan, you're kind of thinking through how you may go about doing this to achieve some of these goals that you thought of in the first phase. And things can get a little bit tough here. As you start researching, you may realize that you're way in over your head. As you start looking at it, you're like, wow, this is going to be a lot more of a challenge than I first thought, as you're starting to put together your action plan, or you're starting to think about your boundaries and how this is all going to fit in. Now, if things get too tough, if you start realizing that, man, this is going to be a long road, or whatever hurdles you may face during this coming up with an action plan phase, this is also, as I said, another huge roadblock where good intentions just go and die, because you realize that, wow, this is a lot more difficult than I initially thought, maybe in that first phase. Now, if it does seem a little bit too tough or unrealistic, this is the perfect time to recalibrate. Maybe lower your goals. I talked about that with achieving realistic goals, and this is a perfect opportunity to maybe scale things back. Maybe you were your plans were too grand, too big, and so instead of just giving up, which I think a lot of people may do, try to scale things back. Try to think of other alternatives and recalibrate and make maybe the goals a little bit easier to achieve. And the main reason for doing this is you really want to set yourself up for these small wins. Why? Because everyone loves winning. And if you can set yourself up for these small wins, you are probably a lot more likely to kind of stick through with the goals that you have kind of set up. Now, at this point, you've set up your realistic goals, you've set up your boundaries or your action plan, you're not feeling too overwhelmed, and you still want to carry on. We're going to enter into phase 3, or part 3 of my series, and this is where it gets really tough. This is probably the toughest phase out of all 3 of them. So this phase that we're going to enter is going to be the execution phase. And as I said, it is the hardest phase. This is where you're really going to meet a lot of hurdles. And if you are one of the lucky few that have made it to this stage, this is where dreams and goals and all these things really die out. So I basically said that this execution phase is really the discipline phase. And in part 3 with discipline, I kind of said that discipline really equals habits. And so I want to touch upon that a little bit more and expand upon that concept and idea. I truly believe with James Clear that the author of Atomic Habits, the best way to set yourself up for success is by forming a habit. So whatever goal you're looking to achieve, if you can turn that into a habit, that will give you the best case scenario, I think, of achieving that goal. Because a habit, basically becomes, for the most part, automatic. Or at least that's the idea or concept with a habit. It just becomes automatic. You don't even have to think about it, you just do it. And so James Clear in his book, if I recall, he basically says that a habit always trumps discipline, because a habit is automatic versus disciplined is not always automatic. And as I said in part 3, I really, really agree with this concept. But the reason I gravitate towards discipline is because at the end of the day, no matter how well you are trying to set yourself up for success, trying to turn it into a habit, your goals into a habit, however you're trying to set that up to make it as easy and as the highest chance that you will actually succeed in reaching your goals, at the end of the day, you simply just have to do it. You just have to execute on this action plan And you got to do it. And you also have to respect the boundaries that you put in place. And this part can be incredibly difficult. There is everything in the world trying to derail you. There are distractions, there's other obligations, things in your control, things completely out of your control. All of these things will work against you when you're trying to achieve your goals. It's so easy to get derailed, give up. If things get really, really hard, you may have to dig deep. So it's not a real surprise to me that what I have laid out is incredibly difficult, and where a lot of people, on the surface, it sounds like they're talking a big game, but in the end don't really do anything that they say they're going to do, because it is incredibly difficult. And so because of this difficulty, what I like about using the term discipline, as opposed to just mentioning everything like as a habit, is because discipline is more, I look at it more as a mindset. It's the mindset, if you have discipline, that whatever you laid out, you are going to stay committed, you are going to follow through, and you are just going to get it done. You are going to execute and remain disciplined, stay the course with anything or however you outlined your action plan to achieve the results and the goals that you are looking to achieve. And I feel that that disciplined mindset is incredibly important and incredibly powerful to help you get through those times and just be honest with yourself, and just to continue that commitment as you are trying to achieve the things that you are looking to achieve. So yes, I agree. If you can turn these things into habits as opposed to discipline, that is great. But I also recognize and value the incredible importance of that discipline mindset. Now, if you were to do any of these, probably the most important one is forming a habit or discipline, because that's the execution phase. That's going to get you some kind of result. And then the advantage of you coming up with realistic goals is you thinking through and trying to figure out what you really want. Like if you can figure that out, then that is incredibly important. Setting up boundaries basically gives you that action plan, and then the execution phase. But out of all of them, I would say that actually just executing and being disciplined is probably the hardest, but it's also probably the most important. And finally, the last concept I will bring up is this concept of recalibration. So what do I mean by that? Let me give a quick example. So let's say, you're at a stage in your life where you don't have kids, and you're really, really big into fitness. You're an ultra marathon endurance runner. You do tons of races, and you're always doing these marathons or ultra marathons, where you're running a lot. And in order to achieve that, you probably have fitness will take up a very, very that will be part of your life, and you'll probably be dedicating a lot of time to your fitness journey. So let's say you've been doing this for 5 years, you're super, super happy with it, the results, and you've been really, really disciplined. And then you meet someone, and you and your significant other want to start a family. Well, at this point, you may want to recalibrate some of your fitness goals, because as you start a family, raise a family, you may find that in order to give the attention to your kids that they either deserve or you think they deserve, you may not have nearly as much time that you can dedicate towards your fitness journey. So at that stage, it's incredibly important to recalibrate. Basically, you're going to have to rethink about your goals. What are you looking to achieve? And you're also going to have to put in different boundaries and figure out exactly what you are willing to do and what you are not willing to do. And then when you figure all of that out, you're going to have to be disciplined in following that action plan or those boundaries that you have put in place, and form basically new habits. And so as you go through life, just because you have one set of goal doesn't mean that you always have to keep that exact same goal. Again, as things change, it's very, very important to recalibrate. And if you don't recalibrate, I think what happens is people just give up entirely, right? So, again, using this fitness example, Maybe you were a big ultra marathon runner, and as soon as you have a family, instead of like recalibrating and trying to figure out how to make it work with your new family life, oftentimes is just you just give up on that fitness. And if you want to give up on that fitness, and just dedicate your time to family, that's completely up to you. I encourage you to do that decision. But I think a lot of times what ends up happening is that person or individual may not be satisfied or happy with that decision. And all it takes is just recalibrating and just kind of figuring things out. So recalibration is always super, super important, depending on what stage of life you're at and all of the other things going on in your incredibly, probably very busy life. So that's it. That's tying everything together. A little bit rambly, but it is what it is. I always tend to ramble on, so should be used to it by now. Anyway, going to end it here, and as always, I hope you found this somewhat useful. Thanks for watching.